Imagine an environment where the local currency is basically just a folded piece of paper,
Right.
and physical dominance completely dictates your social standing. You are heavily surveilled by a governing authority. And, well, worst of all, you are mandated by law to buy a thoughtful gift for your absolute worst enemy.
Well, which is just a terrifying concept.
It really is. I
Yeah.
mean, it sounds like a dystopian corporate nightmare,
Yeah.
right? Or maybe some bizarre sociological experiment, but it's actually just a Tuesday afternoon in a standard kindergarten classroom.
It's so true. It really is the ultimate micro-society. I mean, we tend to look back at childhood through this incredibly thick lens of nostalgia. Like,
Sure.
we filter out the stress, we just remember the finger paints and the nap times. But when you look closely at how children operate, you're looking at a raw, unvarnished version of human civilization.
Welcome to today's deep dive. I am just thrilled about what we're getting into today because we are taking a piece of source material that looks, on the surface, like a quick, funny read. But it is actually a profound text about human nature. We have a deep textual analysis of the classic children's book, Junie B. Jones, and the Mushy Gushy Valentine by Barbara Park.
Yes, featuring those iconic illustrations by Denise Brunkus.
Exactly. And while the setting is simply an afternoon kindergarten classroom, 9, the emotional intelligence, the systemic structures, and, well, the raw power dynamics at play within those four walls mirror adult society in ways that are actually startling.
Well, completely. Barbara Park wasn't just writing a funny story. She was observing a miniature political ecosystem.
Right. So our mission today isn't just to revisit a childhood Valentine's Day story. Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to unpack the intense, high-stakes micro-society of kindergarten.
Yes, let's do it.
We're looking at the complex social hierarchies, the literal psychological warfare of playground friendships, and the paradox of classroom rules versus genuine, unfiltered human emotion.
It's a lot to dig into.
It is. So as we get into this, I want you, the listener, to just think back to your own school days. Think about the sheer panic or elation you felt over a simple piece of folded paper.
Oh, the stakes were so high.
So high. And consider how those very early high-pressure lessons in diplomacy and alliance building are probably still dictating how you navigate your workplace or your relationships today.
It's the foundational training ground, really. And what makes this specific text so brilliant for analysis is the protagonist, Junie B. Jones.
Yes.
She is highly observant, relentlessly literal, and she absolutely refuses to passively accept the rules of this micro-society.
Not at all.
She interrogates the reality presented to her by authority figures at every single turn.
Yeah, she establishes her boundaries in the very first breath. She introduces herself by saying her name is Junie B. Jones, and the B stands for Beatrice.
Right.
But then she explicitly drops this hammer. She says, except I don't like Beatrice. I just like B, and that's all. I mean, it's such a small detail, but right out of the gate, she is rejecting a label given to her by her own family.
In the context of child psychology, claiming ownership over your own name is, well, it's the first real act of self-determination.
Oh, interesting.
Think about the environment she is in. School is a place where almost every variable is controlled by an adult.
Totally.
Children are told exactly when to sit, when to stand, when to speak, when to eat, and when they are allowed to use the restroom. The physical autonomy is basically zero.
Yeah, they have no power.
Exactly. So asserting control over what people are allowed to call you is the ultimate line of defense for individual identity.
And she doesn't just know who she is. She knows exactly what she wants out of life. Her teacher, who she literally just calls Mrs.
Just Mrs.
Just Mrs. The teacher announces there's going to be a Valentine's Day party. And Junie B instantly jumps out of her chair. She doesn't just want a polite little gathering. She has this highly specific, wildly hedonistic vision for the event.
Oh, it's amazing.
She starts rattling off this aggressive list of demands. Cake, donuts, cheese popcorn, cotton candy, pretzels, candy apples.
It just keeps going.
It does. Red licorice, peanut butter cups, chocolate-covered raisins, malted milk balls, and then she specifically yells, and gummy My Bears.
That is the pure, unfiltered Eid right there.
Yeah.
I mean, Freud would have an absolute field day with Junie B. Jones. She's encumbered by adult concepts like budgets, sugar crashes, or logistical planning.
Right, she doesn't care who is paying for this.
Not at all. She is envisioning a total utopia of sensory experience.
She even looks at the teacher and tells her, maybe you should be writing this down.
Which is a brilliant inversion of authority.
Yeah.
But Mrs. represents the superego here.
For sure.
She represents order, institutions, and predictability. So she immediately shuts down the utopia and announces they will be having cupcakes, punch, and candy hearts.
The institutional standard.
Exactly. And Junie B sits down, deeply disappointed, and notes that not much thought went into the menu. But the friction between boundless childhood desire and adult logistical constraint doesn't stop with the food. It bleeds right into the entertainment.
Oh my gosh, the entertainment. So the class starts brainstorming what they should do at the party, and the escalation is just terrifying.
It really is.
A boy named Jamal Hall starts things off reasonably. He asks for a puppet show. That is your standard baseline kindergarten entertainment.
Sure, very safe.
But then Lenny suggests a magician. Roger, sweet, ambitious Roger, suggests a wild animal act, specifically requesting a grizzly bear or a sea lion in room 9.
Which is just, what's fascinating here is we can observe a phenomenon called group contagion.
Group contagion.
Yeah. In an uninhibited group, especially among children, one idea acts as a springboard for the next, completely untethering the group from reality. Because they haven't fully internalized societal norms about safety or physics, the parameters of what is possible just keep expanding.
And it peaks so beautifully. A boy named Polly Allen Puffer runs to the front of the room, jumps up and down, and shouts, "We could get some of those jugglers who juggle chainsaws."
Amazing.
And the entire class just erupts, clapping, whistling, hooting, and hollering. Because, as Junie points out, who doesn't love chainsaw jugglers?
Right, because to a child, a chainsaw juggler is just as plausible as a puppet show.
Wait, really?
Yeah, because adults control the entire world. Adults have infinite resources from the perspective of a kindergartner. If adults can make a school bus appear every morning out of nowhere, why couldn't they conjure a grizzly bear or a man throwing running power tools?
That makes so much sense. And the text paints this incredible visual of the teacher's reaction. After the class stops clapping for the chainsaws, they look at Mrs. Porce. Her head is just resting on her desk.
Oh, the poor one.
She's staring blankly out the door. The class gets quiet because she's actually scaring them a little bit. It is this visceral collision of boundless childhood chaos slamming into adult exhaustion.
It highlights the immense energetic toll of being the sole anchor of reality for 18 untethered minds. Mrs. isn't just teaching them letters. She is constantly managing the boundary between their imagination and the physical limitations of the real world.
And speaking of letters, this brings us to perhaps the most intense linguistic battle of the entire story, which happens out on the playground.
Oh, the Valentine debate.
Yes, Junie B is talking to her best friend Grace about the giant box Mrs. brought in for the cards. Junie is thrilled, talking about how it will hold a million bajillion Valentines. And Grace immediately shuts her down.
Immediately.
She says, "Stop saying Valentine, Junie B. You were supposed to say Valentine with an N sound."
This is peer-to-peer policing in its most raw form. Grace is enforcing standard linguistic conventions. She is aligning herself with the adult world of rules.
But Junie B is having none of it. She does a huffy breath and delivers this incredible line. "You are not the boss of my words, Grace. This is a freed country, and if I want to say Valentine, I can. And I will not even go to jail."
It's so good.
She is literally invoking constitutional rights to defend her pronunciation of the letter M.
Well, language is one of the very few domains where children can assert absolute autonomy.
Right.
For Junie B, it's not simply a phonetic error. Conceding to Grace means surrendering a piece of her personal agency. She prefers the M sound, and to her, that aesthetic preference supersedes the dictionary.
You know what this actually is? This is the corporate Slack channel dynamic.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, think about it. We all have that one coworker who is obsessed with correcting everyone's grammar in the company Slack.
Yes, the asterisk people.
Exactly. When someone types instead of "you're in a fast-moving thread," they are the first to drop the asterisk and the correction. It is rarely about clarity because everyone understood the message.
Right, the meaning was conveyed.
The project isn't going to fail because of a missing apostrophe. It's almost always about establishing a hierarchy. It's a way of saying, I know the rules better than you do, therefore I have higher intellectual status. So I have to ask, is Grace genuinely trying to be helpful, or is she flexing?
The Slack analogy is incredibly accurate because it deals with the exact same underlying mechanism, which is intellectual dominance.
Yeah.
In the microsociety of kindergarten, Physical dominance, who is the fastest, who is the strongest, and intellectual dominance are the primary ways children establish their pecking order.
Wow.
Grace may consciously believe she is being a good friend by providing the correct information, but the immediate public correction of her friend functions as a status flex. She is demonstrating her mastery of the adult system.
And Junie B recognizes the threat to her status immediately. They get into a real standoff over it. Squinty eyes, crossed arms, tapping angry feet. It's a full-blown Mexican standoff on the playground over a consonant.
What's equally fascinating, though, is the resolution.
Right.
They quickly realize that the cost of the standoff is too high. Junie notes that fighting with friends is not fun. They hug, they apologize, and they do a victory skip together back to the classroom.
Yeah, Grace says, "Sorry I tried to be the boss of your words," and Junie replies, "Sorry Valentine doesn't have an M in it."
It's brilliant.
It's so refreshing. If only that slack coworker could just do a victory skip to the break room with you after correcting your typo.
Seriously. But children are often much more pragmatic about their social capital than adults. They assess the situation. Is winning a phonetic disagreement worth losing my primary playmate for the next 20 minutes of recess?
Definitely not.
Exactly. The answer is no. So they negotiate a rapid truce and move on.
But this fierce desire for individual autonomy, for being the boss of your own words, immediately crashes into the ultimate symbol of forced classroom conformity. Mrs. mandates the creation of the Valentine box, and the rules of engagement are laid down.
We shift from the relative freedom of the playground directly into the highly regulated artificial economy of the classroom.
First, they have to decorate the box. Everyone gets scissors and white paper, and instantly it becomes a competitive blood sport.
Oh, the scissor race.
Junie B cuts her first paper heart and loudly declares she has the fastest scissors in room 9, which of course triggers a boy named Meanie Jim, who jumps up and yells that he has already cut too.
The rapid escalation of competition over a completely menial collaborative task.
It escalates so fast. Junie cuts another to time it too. Jim cuts a third. Junie cuts a third. Jim screams he's up to 4. Junie gets so flustered she calls it frustration that her scissors go completely out of control, her heart turns into scribble scraps, and she yells at Jim.
Right.
At which point, the adult state intervenes. A large hand flies over her head, snatches her scissors, and then goes over and snatches Jim's scissors. Their decorating privileges are permanently revoked.
It's a perfect illustration of how the ego and the drive for supremacy can destroy a cooperative effort.
Yeah.
Mrs. is trying to create a communal object, a shared piece of infrastructure for the party, but the children turn a cooperative art project into a hostile arms race. The confiscation of the tools is the governing authority stepping in to stop the chaos of the free market, so to speak.
And the governing authority has a lot of rules to impose. Mrs. passes out a list of names. There are 18 children in room 9. She mandates that everyone needs to bring 18 valentines. Now, Junie B, being the hyper-literal thinker she is, raises her hand and asks, "Do we bring valentines for ourselves too?"
A completely logical question. I mean, if the rule is everyone in the room, she is technically in the room.
Right. And Mrs. catches her own mistake, adjusting the math. 17 valentines, because you don't give one to yourself. But then Junie B asks the critical question that brings the entire philosophy of the holiday into focus. She asks if they had to give a valentine to the big, fat, stinky heads.
The stinky heads.
Meaning the people they actively dislike.
And Mrs. response is unequivocal.
Yep.
Yes, everyone must bring a card for everyone.
Mrs. actually throws her arms in the air and says, "For the last time, you will bring a card for everyone in room 9. Even the big, fat, stinky heads."
Which is a major breach of teacher protocol.
Oh, totally. It shocks the class because teachers aren't supposed to say stinky heads. Then Mrs. closes her eyes, walks slowly to the sink, and literally takes an aspirin.
That visceral detail of the teacher taking an aspirin at the sink speaks volumes. It's the physical and emotional labor of enforcing artificial harmony.
We really need to break down this concept of forced equality because it feels central to everything happening in this room. The school is attempting to legislate kindness.
Precisely. The institution is terrified of the alternative, which is social exclusion. They're trying to prevent the profound emotional trauma that occurs when one child receives 0 cards while another receives 20.
Right, which happens.
It does. To prevent this inequity, they mandate an equal distribution of affection. Every student must bring 17 cards. It creates an artificial economy where the currency of friendship is evenly distributed by law.
But the paradox is that it teaches a really bizarre, almost damaging lesson. I call it the stinky head paradox.
Right.
You are forcing a child to hand a token of affection to their antagonist.
Yeah.
Junie B has to give a card to Meanie Jim, a boy she actively fights with. She's being taught to suppress her true feelings for the sake of social decorum.
It forces massive cognitive dissonance on the child. Think about the broader messaging we give children. We tell them to be honest, to speak their truth, and to protect their personal boundaries.
Constantly.
But in the next breath, the institution mandates that they hand a physical symbol of love to their bully, purely to maintain the illusion of a harmonious community. It prioritizes the appearance of cohesion over the authenticity of individual relationships.
This mandate in Room 9 is exactly like the awkward corporate office Secret Santa, or, a mandatory team-building gift exchange.
Oh, how do you see those overlapping?
Well, think about the dynamics of a corporate office. There is always someone, maybe in accounting, maybe in sales, who continuously makes your life miserable.
Right.
They CC your boss on minor mistakes, they leave passive-aggressive notes in the break room, they steal your lunch. They are the adult equivalent of a big, fat, stinky head.
That is painfully accurate.
And then December rolls around, and HR rolls out the mandatory holiday gift exchange. You draw their name. You are now contractually obligated by office culture to go to a store, spend $15 of your own money, and buy a nice candle or a ceramic mug for someone you actively resent.
Yes, the mandated mug.
You are wrapping your resentment in a cheerful package with a bow, just so HR can take a photo and say, the office has a great culture. It's entirely performative.
The parallels are exact. In both the kindergarten classroom and the corporate office, the governing body is terrified of authentic friction. They mandate a physical exchange of goods to simulate cohesion and mask underlying tensions.
Yeah.
And in both cases, the participants are acutely aware of the hypocrisy. The mug you give to the annoying coworker means nothing, just as the paper heart given to the classroom bully means nothing.
But Junie B doesn't just passively accept this rule. Here's where it gets really interesting. She tries to gamify the system. If she is forced to participate in this artificial economy, she wants a return on her investment. On Monday, she skips into room 9 carrying all her valentines in a paper bag. She runs to Mrs., shoves them through the mail slot in the box, and Mrs. remarks that she is the very first person in room 9 to bring her cards in.
And Junie's reaction is incredible.
She gasps. She springs into the air, runs in a circle, and yells, "I've never been first at anything before. Not ever, ever, never. And so what is my prize for winning?" She literally closes her eyes and holds out her hands, expecting a tangible reward.
She has internalized a deeply capitalistic expectation. Early adoption, compliance, or superior efficiency should be met with material compensation. She has fulfilled the state's mandate faster than anyone else, and she expects a bonus.
But Mrs. crushes her. "Junie B, honey, I'm really sorry, but there is no prize. We weren't actually having a contest." Junie's shoulders slump, but she doesn't give up. She pivots immediately to negotiation.
She's so resilient.
She rocks on her feet and asks, "Would you have a mint in your drawer, maybe? Or some stickers?"
She refuses to leave empty-handed. She recognizes her leverage. She complied perfectly and early, and she is demanding compensation, even if she has to lower her asking price to a mint.
And she actually gets a payout. Mrs. takes her to her desk, opens the drawer, and offers her a broken piece of chalk and a yellow rubber band. And Junie B just yells, "Sold." It is the funniest, most pragmatic negotiation. She proudly takes her broken chalk and rubber band back to her desk to show off to her wealthy friend Lucille.
Which is the perfect pivot point to examine how these children are navigating this forced equality behind the scenes. Because while Mrs. is desperately trying to enforce a flat, equal structure where everyone gets exactly 17 cards, the children are already actively subverting it.
They really are.
They are bringing their own external socioeconomic status into the classroom to manipulate the market.
Let's look at how Junie B meticulously selects her cards at home. Her mother helps her, but Junie B has a very specific, calculated rationale for every single card she assigns. For her rich friend Lucille, she picks a card with a lovely princess on it. Why? Because, as Junie explains, when she grows up, she is going to marry an expensive prince, and she's going to let me and Grace sweep her castle. Plus, also we will get to wear her raggedy, used-up gowns.
Her mother's reaction to this is wonderfully understated. She just quietly murmurs, "Lucille's a regular saint."
Right. But Junie genuinely believes she and Grace are lucky to have her. Then, for her other best friend, Grace, she picks a card with 2 running shoes on the front that says, "Valentine, you and I make the perfect pair," which is incredibly thoughtful because Grace is the fastest runner in the class.
That's sweet.
But then she gets Demini Gem.
The required card for the antagonist. The mandated gift.
Junie looks through her box of cards and specifically selects one with a funny skunk on the front. Her mother warns her that a picture of a skunk doesn't seem very nice for a Valentine, and Junie just puts it in the envelope and says, "Perfect. Cause neither's Jim."
This is a brilliant example of malicious compliance.
Oh, absolutely.
Junie B is complying with the letter of the law. She's giving Jim a card. She's fulfilling the 17-card quota mandated by the teacher, but she's completely violating the spirit of the law. She uses the imagery of the card to deliver a covert insult. The skunk represents her true feelings, neatly bypassed right under the teacher's radar.
It's the kindergarten equivalent of signing a passive-aggressive email with warmly.
Yes.
But the real economic divide in Room 9 becomes glaringly obvious when we look closely at Lucille. Lucille is the embodiment of extreme wealth in this setting. When Junie shows Lucille her hard-won prize, the broken chalk and rubber band, Lucille turns her nose up at it. She says, "Have you been going through the trash can again?"
A brutal classist dismissal.
And then Lucille starts bragging about her own valentines. She hasn't brought them yet because they aren't back from the printers. She says every card will have love and kisses from Lucille printed on the bottom, and each one features a cherry lollipop in the shape of Cupid. Because, as she informs Junie, Cupid is the symbol of Valentine's Day,
To which Junie B wonderfully retorts that skunks and shoes are also symbols of Valentine's Day.
Right. But Lucille's bragging doesn't stop at the printed cards.
Yeah.
Later, out on the playground, she gets into a massive disagreement with Grace. Lucille announces to everyone that she's going to get more Valentines than anyone else. She says the boys will bring her lots and lots of cards.
This is a critical mathematical error on Lucille's part.
Huge error.
Grace immediately points out the reality of Mrs. Rule. But Mrs. said to only bring one card for every boy and girl, remember? Not lots and lots.
And Lucille's response is the pure, unadulterated distillation of entitlement. She says, "Silly Grace, look at me, for goodness sake, I am precious. And when you're precious, boys automatically bring you lots of Valentines. They just can't help themselves."
Oh, wow.
She claims she is way cuter than anyone else, and she giggles and points directly at Grace, saying, "Even you."
It is incredibly cruel, but we really have to unpack Lucille as an archetype here.
Please do.
She is the absolute embodiment of inherited privilege and cultural capital. She operates under the deeply held belief that her external assets, her perceived preciousness, which is heavily subsidized by her family's wealth, equate to inherent biological superiority.
Wow. Yeah.
She genuinely believes that the rules of forced equality, the hard math of 17 cards, simply do not apply to her because she is exceptional. She believes she deserves disproportionate love, attention, and resources as a natural right of her existence.
And she lists her material assets to prove her superiority. When Junie B steps in to defend Grace, Lucille literally yells, "But I have the big screen TV and a pool."
Looking at how her family treats her, specifically this Nana, who provides professional caterers for their punch and pays for custom-printed lollipops, how much of this is Lucille's fault and how much is she just a product of her environment?
I think Lucille is entirely a victim of the narrative constructed by her Nana. Her grandmother has set her up for a massive, potentially traumatic reality check. Think of a minor reality TV star stepping off their heavily edited, highly produced television set where PAs get them coffee and producers tell them they are a genius and walking out into the real world.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
They realize very quickly that their niche fame doesn't translate to actual currency with everyday people. They walk into a local coffee shop expecting VIP treatment, and the barista just says, "That'll be $6.
Right.
Lucille's been told she's the star of the show at home, but Room 9 is a democracy, and it's about to hit her like a ton of bricks.
The currency of her home environment money, catering big screen TVs, is suddenly competing in a foreign market with entirely different exchange rates.
Which brings us back to Junie B acting as Grace's brilliant defense attorney on the playground. After Lucille lists her wealth, Junie B and Grace literally lean their heads together in a huddle, and a hug to strategize. And Junie B comes back with Grace's assets to combat Lucille's big screen TV. Junie lists them off. Grace can whistle through her teeth. She can wiggle her ears. She can dribble a basketball through her legs while running.
Notice what Junie B is doing here. She is subverting Lucille's traditional aristocratic status symbols with highly practical, idiosyncratic kid currency.
And when Lucille screams her final, desperate trump card, "But I have a coney," Junie B pats her sympathetically and delivers the ultimate death blow. She says softly, "Sorry, Grace has a snake."
The snake defense.
The text literally says Lucille's shoulders sagged and she sat down on the grass, because boys love snakes better than anything. Lucille is entirely defeated by a reptile.
It's glorious.
It is. Grace is a good sport about it and sits next to Lucille to pat her shoulder, but the new hierarchy has been firmly established.
It is a masterclass in shifting the paradigm. Junie B realizes she cannot win the battle of financial assets. She cannot outspend Lucille, so she changes the metrics of value entirely. In the raw, unfiltered economy of a playground, physical skills, whistling, running, wiggling ears, and the possession of exotic, slightly dangerous pets like a snake hold significantly more purchasing power than a pony that no one in the class will ever actually see or ride.
Exactly.
The pony is abstract, off-site wealth. The snake is tangible, immediate coolness.
This playground debate is just the anticipation, though. The real test of this economy happens on the day of the party. Friday arrives, and Lucille's grand expectations are about to violently collide with the cold, hard math of room 9.
The reckoning of Valentine's Day.
Junie B is wearing a special Valentine's outfit bought by her grandma Helen Miller that perfectly matches her hard antennas. Mrs. takes attendance, and nobody is absent because nobody misses a party.
Of course not.
Mrs. puts on a special apron with a huge heart pocket and starts delivering the cards from the giant box. And she gives the very first one to Junie B. Jones. Junie loses her mind, shouting, "Yahoo! I am first again, Mrs."
Her obsession with being first remains incredibly consistent.
But after the delivery is done, the intense data analysis begins. Lucille calls Grace over to her table. Lucille wants to count their cards to see who got the most from the boys. Grace is nervous. She counts her pile and her face falls. She sighs and says, "I only got 17. I only got one card from every person." And that's all. No extras.
And Lucille's reaction is incredibly telling regarding her character. The text says her face lighted up very bright. She flips her hair in the air and says, "Gee, I'm sorry to hear that, Grace. Well, I suppose I should count mine now."
She is literally feeding on Grace's perceived failure. She loves it. So Lucille starts counting her own pile out loud for an audience, 13, 14, 15, 16. And then she stops.
Uh-oh.
Because there's only one more Valentine left in her pile. She gets 17. Exactly the same as Grace. Exactly the mandated amount.
The reality check we discussed earlier has arrived.
She has an absolute meltdown. She stands up, looks under the table, on her chair, in her pockets, in her backpack, in her purse, and then she sits down and delivers this heartbreakingly confused line. "I don't understand. How could this be happening? Every day my Nana tells me how special I am. But 17 Valentines isn't special at all. 17 Valentines is just the same as everybody else."
This raises an important question about how we socialize children regarding equality and self-worth.
Yeah.
Lucille's profound disappointment is a brilliant, concentrated depiction of the clash between sheltered, familial entitlement and democratic fairness. To Lucille, equality feels like a demotion.
Wow, that's so true.
She has been conditioned by her grandmother to believe that special inherently means more than everyone else. Therefore, when the system successfully enforces mathematical equality, she doesn't feel included. She feels robbed of her rightful superiority. The tragedy of Lucille is that she cannot enjoy the 17 tokens of friendship she received because she is entirely fixated on the surplus she was promised, but denied.
Equality feels like oppression when you're accustomed to privilege. But let's look at Junie's contrasting reaction to her own math, because it is wildly different. Grace tells Junie to count hers. Junie says, "Of course I got 17, silly Grace. Everybody in this whole room got 17. It was the rule, remember?"
Right.
She puts them in a pile and counts. But then she frowns. She counts them again and again, because somebody broke the rule. Junie B only has 16 cards.
And her reaction is explosive.
She immediately springs up, stands on her chair, and begins aggressively interrogating the entire room. "All right, people who didn't send me a Valentine, and do not try to deny it, because I've only got 16 cards in my pile."
Oh my goodness.
She points her finger at Meanie Jim. "Was it you, mister?" Then she pivots. "Or maybe it was you, Mr. Paulie Allen Puffer. Or you, Charlotte, who I don't actually know your last name. Or you, Roger."
Until Mrs. swoops in and physically removes her from the chair.
Look at the difference in their reactions, though. Lucille gets the mathematically correct number and feels unspecial. Junie B gets shorted one card, and she doesn't feel unspecial or unloved. She feels robbed. She views it as a blatant breach of contract.
Junie B fundamentally trusts the rules of the social contract when they apply to fairness. She was told the math was 17. She expects 17. When she receives 16, she immediately assumes malice rather than an accident.
Yeah, she doesn't think it's a mistake.
Not at all. She believes a crime has been committed against her person, and she appoints herself the lead detective and prosecutor.
Mrs. tries to soothe her, saying it was just a mistake, no one would do it on purpose. But Junie looks at her and thinks, Mrs. is a nice teacher, but sometimes she doesn't understand children at all.
Mhm.
Junie knows someone did it on purpose. Children are entirely capable of targeted omission. So she formulates a plan with Lucille to check the signatures on the cards to deduce who is missing. Smart, right?
A sound investigative technique, matching signatures to the class roster.
Except 7 of her cards aren't even signed. Some kids just dropped them in. So that plan is busted. But then, Mrs. hurries over. She says she found something in the bottom of the Valentine's box and asks Junie to guess what it is.
And Junie, in her infinite wisdom, guesses a meatball.
Twice. She guesses a meatball twice. Mrs. is exasperated, rolls her eyes at the ceiling, and finally pulls out a giant envelope addressed to Junie B, and Mrs. says softly, bingo.
Which leads to a fantastic linguistic misunderstanding.
Junie misses the nuance of the adult idiom completely. She starts shouting, yes! Bingo, 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 jumping and dancing around the room, totally thinking the card is literally from the game of bingo or perhaps a dog named Bingo.
Right.
But she opens it, and it's the most beautiful card she's ever seen. Lace, hearts, purple ribbon weaved around the edge. It's a mushy-gushy kind. She begs Mrs. to read the name. Mrs. laughs and says, from your secret admirer.
The introduction of romantic mystery into the kindergarten ecosystem.
Junie B is stunned. Huh? What? Who? Mrs. explains that a secret admirer is someone who likes you very much, but is too shy to tell you. Junie is thrilled. Her Valentine's Day is almost perfect. Now she just has to figure out who the admirer is. And this kicks off her active investigation.
Which is, well, it's highly unconventional.
That is the understatement of the year.
Yeah.
She decides to target the boys she thinks might be shy or who tease her. She starts with crybaby William, who sits behind her and is famously shy. She spins around, waves, and says, hello, shy boy. She tells him she knows his secret, and then she unleashes her method. The wink, wink.
Because she cannot physically wink her eye.
Right, so he just verbally says the words out loud. Wink, 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 wink. See my eye. See how it is trying to wink at you.
Poor William.
And poor William's face starts to sweat. He begs her to turn around. She tries to tickle him under the chin. He swats her hand away, and eventually he literally ducks under the table to escape her.
It is an aggressive, invasive, tactical approach.
Comparing Junie's wink-wink encounters to an absurdly bad police interrogation tactic is almost too easy. She is trying to force a confession of love through sheer, terrifying intimidation. It's like a bad cop slamming their hands on the table under a bare light bulb, shouting, admit you love me, William.
She fundamentally misunderstands the concept of a secret admirer. If the person is too shy to sign their name on a piece of paper, aggressive physical confrontation is the absolute worst strategy to elicit a confession. It only drives the suspect further underground out of self-preservation.
And she does it to everyone. She zooms over to Polly Allen Puther. Wink, wink. Thank you for the beautiful Valentine, Paul. Polly's confused, says his card was the one with the oozy slime monster, and corrects her on his name.
Naturally.
Then she goes to a boy named Ham, who hardly knows her. She leans in. Okay, Ham, I'm running out of patience here. Wink, wink. Okay, now were you my secret admirer or not? And please tell me the truth, or you will be sorry.
And Ham responds by putting his thumbs in his ears, flapping his hands, and sticking his tongue out.
A clear no. Junie sits down, completely frustrated. Finding a secret admirer is not as easy as it sounds. But despite all her detective work, her interrogations, and her data analysis, the truth is revealed through a total accident.
The bell rings for recess.
Right. Junie and Grace skip outside, but Junie suddenly realizes she left her beautiful, giant, mushy-gushy valentines sitting right on her table. She panics, tells Grace to wait, and runs back into room 9. And who does she spy at her table, physically picking up her card? Meanie Jim.
The antagonist.
She yells at him, zooms to the table, and yanks it right out of his mitts. She turns to run outside, but Jim springs in front of her, holding up his hand. He yells, "Stop! Don't take that Valentine outside. If you take it outside, you get it dirty."
Add the slip-up.
Junie makes squinty eyes and says it's not his beeswax. But Jim stamps his foot. "Yes, to my beeswax, Junie B. Jones. That card costed me a whole month's allowance, and I don't want you to get dirt on it."
The accidental confession.
It slips right out. As soon as he says it, he slaps his hands over his mouth. But Junie heard it. She gasps, "You, Jim, you are the one who bought this card." "What? How come? Is this some kind of meaty boy joke?"
She doesn't believe it.
Jim starts sputtering, trying to backtrack, saying it just looks like it cost a lot of money. But Junie sees right through it. He's sputtering, he's nervous, his face is red and blotchy. Finally, Jim physically clunks himself in the head.
The frustration of the unmasked admirer. He says, "Darn it, I knew I'd ruin it. I always ruin everything. Now everybody in room 9 will know that I like you. And I wanted it to stay a secret."
And Junie's face just lights up. She asks, You like me, Jim. You really, really like me. Because you never acted like you like me.
Hmm.
And so, since when did you like me? And Jim gets this silly look and admits, very quietly, I've always liked you. I just act like I don't like you so nobody will know I like you.
This is a classic psychological defense mechanism, but articulated with surprising clarity for a kindergarten character. He employs hostility as a smokescreen for vulnerability.
But Junie is confused, and rightly so. She asks the most logical question. But if you like me, how come you always call me names? And what follows is this incredible negotiation of hostility.
Oh, so funny.
Jim shrugs and says, because you call me names. Junie says she only does it because he started it first. Jim says, no, I did not. You started it first. No, you did. No, Junie B, you did. No, you did.
They are deadlocked in a cycle of retaliatory blame.
Until Jim raises his hand, waves it around, and suggests a compromise. He says, maybe we both started it, Junie B. Maybe we both started calling each other names on the very same day. And Junie smiles. She thinks this is entirely fair.
It is a brilliant diplomatic resolution.
Really is.
By agreeing that the hostility was mutually initiated on the exact same day, neither party has to concede defeat or accept primary blame. They establish a foundation of absolute equality in their antagonism.
Junie is so happy about this nice development that she grabs his hand and suggests they go tell Mrs. that they're friends, because she will get a kick out of this.
But Jim panics.
He immediately plops down on the floor and refuses to budge.
Yeah.
Junie is perplexed. But Jim explains his Sparky philosophy, and this is where the text really elevates into a genuine philosophical observation.
Jim says he can't tell the teacher or anyone else. If people know, it will ruin everything. His friends will know he likes girls, which is embarrassing. But more importantly, he says room 9 won't ever be the same again. It will be dull and boring.
Yeah, dull and boring.
Why? Because if they know they like each other, Jim won't tease her anymore. And if he doesn't tease her, she won't tease him back. And that means she won't shout silly, funny stuff at him that makes people laugh. He rocks on his feet, bashful, and says, "You make room 9 sparky."
You know what trope this is? This is the classic enemies to lovers dynamic. I'm looking at Junie and Jim, and I am directly comparing them to the fast-talking antagonistic leads in classic romantic comedies.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about When Harry Met Sally, or 10 Things I Hate About You, or even Beatrice and Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing. The banter, the biting remarks, the constant one-upmanship, it's foreplay. It's a way of intensely interacting with someone when you don't know how to express vulnerability.
Right, it's a safe way to engage.
The fact that Jim is incredibly self-aware for a kindergartner is astounding. He explicitly recognizes that the tension itself is what makes their relationship fun and valuable.
What Jim is describing, the sparky quality, is the idea that friction, debate, and even mild, mutually agreed-upon antagonism can be forms of deep engagement and intellectual stimulation. He recognizes that their conflict is not actually toxic. It is performative, it is challenging, and it is the primary source of entertainment and vitality in their shared environment.
Look at what happens immediately after this confession. Jim smiles, pokes her arm, and makes a sparky sound. Junie laughs, sparks him back, and suddenly they are chasing each other all over room 9, poking and sparking.
They're just playing.
Junie says it was the funnest game she ever heard of. But then Mrs. walks in.
The adult authority figure re-enters the frame.
Mrs. catches them. Hey, what's going on in here? You two are supposed to be on the playground. Jim looks terrified that Junie will spill his secret. So Junie, thinking fast, points at him and fakes being mad. It's his fault, Mrs. Cause. Jim poked me and made a sparky sound, and then I had to poke him back. And so pretty soon we were chasing and sparking, and so we will just be on our way to the playground, I believe.
Huh.
She literally taps Mrs. V and says, pardon me while I get by.
And Mrs. reaction. She rolls her eyes way back in her head, sighs, and says, honestly, you two, it's Valentine's Day. Can't you get along for just one day? And then she physically marches them outside. If we connect this to the bigger picture, she entirely misreads the situation.
She completely missed it.
The adult sees physical movement, loud noises, and what looks like conflict, and immediately categorizes it as negative behavior. She completely misses the fact that this fight is actually a highly complex, joyful play state.
Yeah, it's a game.
Exactly. It is a game agreed upon by two equals who have just navigated an incredibly vulnerable emotional revelation. The adult demands sterile getting along, completely blind to the fact that the children are engaging in a much deeper, more authentic form of connection.
So what does this all mean? When we look at Jim's secret, the Zeke game, the fake fight to protect the secret, it means that the best friendships and the most engaging relationships aren't always the smoothest ones. Sometimes they're the ones that challenge us, the ones that keep us on our toes, the ones that make us sparky.
It is a rejection of the mandated artificial harmony that the school system and adult society at large often tries to enforce.
The story ends beautifully. Once they are safely outside, Jim looks at her shyly and thanks her for not telling his secret. Junie smiles, thanks him for the Mushy Gushy Valentine, and then faces her eyeball at him and says, "Wink, wink, Jim. Wink, wink, wink."
And Jim?
He points his eyeball right back at her and he winks perfectly.
A shared language, finally achieved.
And then they run off to play with their separate friends, because if people thought they liked each other, it would ruin everything. Junie concludes that Meanie Jim is the best secret admirer she ever had, and Room 9 is still staying sparky.
It is a triumphant, deeply satisfying conclusion to a highly complex social negotiation.
We have traveled from arguing over the constitutional right to pronounce the letter M in Valentine, to the brutal, unforgiving math of 17 equal cards, to the beautiful realization that the person who challenges you the most, who aggravates you the most, might actually be your biggest fan in disguise.
Absolutely.
So think about your workplace, your social circles, your family dynamics. Evaluate the Meanie Jims or the Lucille's in your own life. Are you navigating an office or a community full of forced, polite interactions, smiling while handing over that metaphorical 17-card quota? Are you secretly wishing for a bit more sparky honesty?
Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought to mull over. As adults, we are conditioned to iron out all the friction in our relationships. We are taught to prioritize seamless, polite, frictionless interactions, much like Mrs. tried to do with her strict 17-card rule.
Right.
We aim for a flat emotional landscape where no one is offended, but perhaps no one is deeply engaged either. But what is truly lost when we mandate absolute harmony? By avoiding the scribble scraps and the stinky heads, are we suppressing the very spark that makes human connection dynamic, challenging, and ultimately memorable? Is a perfectly smooth relationship actually just a dull one?
That is a phenomenal question to leave off on. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive into Room 9 with us today. Remember to look for the nuances in your own daily interactions, question the mandated harmony, and above all else, try to keep your own worlds just a little bit sparky. We'll catch you on the next one.